Well, hey, everybody, welcome to Metro. Whether you are in one of our physical locations or tuning in online, it's great to have you with us. My name's Seth Conerly. I'm one of the pastors on staff here. And can I ask you, how are you doing from a scale of amazing to 2020? How are you doing? Because I tell you right now, I'm doing very 2020 is what I'm doing right now. It's been a rough week at the Conerly household, if I'm being very transparent with you. I've realized that I learned how rough of a week it's been in my household. This is how I know. If I'm speaking, I'm always over here, side stage before we come up here, and we're always obviously all worshiping together and all that. And normally what happens is I am praying for all of you, whether you're online or in the room, and I'm just praying. I'm excited and expectant, and I'm going, man, God, speak. I want you to speak through your word and the teaching of all these things. That's what I'm praying about. I'm praying for you, blessing on you and your family, all this stuff. That's how I'm worshiping and praying to God. But when I know it's bad, it's when all I'm praying for is me and my family in the midst of all. I'm like, God, be with my wife right now. Just be with her. Be with me too, actually. That'd be top notch. I got to preach in a second, and I'm an empty vessel. I got nothing to offer right now, so just speak through me, Lord. And the beauty of our God and His power is that it is made perfect in our weak points. And so I am excited to see what God has to say today and speak in my weakness, if I'm being honest with you. But really today is about this idea of focusing on the power of God. See, we've been talking all about wandering, not wondering, but wandering, being lost, kind of aimless and without direction. And last week we started off, we did all these metaphor about sheep and all that, and just calm down. I know we had a video earlier that said sheep, and you were probably over sheep after. Like, I'm good. I'm not going to do any more sheep stuff. You're welcome in advance. But what I will tell you is that we're like sheep, and we can be wandering aimlessly. We talked all about that last week, and this overall understanding of whether that means you've never been following God, or maybe it's you've been a follower of Christ for many, many years, but you've just drifted and wandered away from where God would have you. Today we're going to be looking at something pretty interesting, and that's the concept of preventing wandering in the first place, all the signs of what that looks like. And we're actually going to be looking at the most famous wanderers of Scripture, if you will, and that is the Israelites in the Old Testament, who literally ended up wandering around in the desert for 40 years. I'd say that was pretty bad directions. And what's interesting is if you do a study of the actual geography of where they ended up wandering, it should not have taken them a long time at all, but it took them 40 years. So really bad. I mean, even worse than me with directions, which is impressive. And speaking of, I can tell you, my directions are so bad. I know I joked about it last week, but I think you need to understand the scope, though. It's not simply like, hey, 60 miles away, and getting from there to here, I'm going to struggle, okay? It's every aspect of my life. In the video earlier, you actually heard the guy talking about he saw a man in a supermarket who was just standing there and he looked lost. I'm pretty sure he saw me, is what it boils down to, because that's me now, okay? COVID's done something weird, and I don't know if your household dynamics have worked out this way, but for me, what has become is that Taylor, we're like, you only go out every once in a while. You send people out, like you send out the scout from the household to go check out everything, or I'm going out, I'm the hunter right now, I'm going to go hunt down those aisles of schnooks to get the food I need. And she sends out, she's like, baby, I'm pregnant and I'm taking care of the baby. Here's a list. You go get the stuff. And I'm like, this is going to go really bad. This is just not good. This list is not coming back. That's what you need. Every time there's stuff on the list that does not make it back to the house. Last night, example, I was supposed to get some white cheddar chips, but the pregnant lady was craving them and I did not bring them. Yeah, that was a bad time. So I missed it, okay? But this is the way, I don't know if it happens this way in your house as well, okay? My wife writes down all of the stuff on the list stream of consciousness and not from the geography layout of schnooks from right to left is what it boils down to, okay? When I walk into that place, you got to understand something. I don't know where 99% of the stuff in that place is. I don't. I know where the cereal aisle is, and I know where the soft drinks are. I'm lost beyond that is what it boils down to, okay? I might find the toilet paper, but it doesn't exist most of the time now, so I'm lost there too. So I walk in, and it's just all over the place. So you got to understand, what would take my wife 30 minutes is at least an hour and a half endeavor for me. Because I'm going to go over to this side of things, I'm going to get like some bananas, and then I'm going to be like, well, it says that I need to get some frozen broccoli, and so I'm already doing vegetables and fruit, so I might as well, oh no, that's on the other side of the whole store. It's on the complete other, and I'm back and forth, and I got my steps in, is all I got to tell you. But I am abysmal at it, so much so that literally a day ago, I was given directions, and it was small lists. It was like, we need dinner. Provide for us, Seth. Go get us this food. Hunt down this beef of roast and find it for us so that we can make a French dip and some ají sauce, right? That's so good. If you haven't made that at your house, you got to do it. I'm not good at it, but my wife is. And so we show up. I am not the culinary genius of my household. My brother-in-law is fantastic. My wife is fantastic. I am not fantastic at it. And so she sends me out. I go to get this thing. Now, this is going to be, you're going to judge me hard, okay? Is what it boils down to. And it's okay. I deserve it, is what it boils down to with all that. Yeah. I walk into this place, and my wife says, Seth, I need you to get roast beef. It had a specific name. It was like London something or another. I don't know. I didn't know I needed British roast beef. I just need roast beef. And so she tells me to get this stuff. And in my head, where you go to get the roast beef is where I would ever get something. I'm a simple guy. Where did I go? I went to the pre-packaged deli meats in the back of this place, okay? And I'm looking for this London frog broil something or another. I don't know. I'm looking for it. I can't find it. I'm sitting there. I'm like, there's meat everywhere, and there's the packaged meat here. I go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the source. I'm going to the butcher. So I walk over to the counter. I'm like, sir, butcher, friend, hey, can you show me where London Majigger stuff, the broil, where's it at? Where's the stuff for making the roast beefs, okay? And he goes, well, okay. He looks at me kind of confused, and I was like, I don't know why we're confused. You work, this is your area. Like, where do I need to go? And he starts walking me around. He takes me to a half-inch thick slab of steak, and he goes, hey, I think this is the closest to what you're looking. I was like, I got to make roast beef. Like, I don't know what sandwiches you're making for roast beef sandwiches but you're more of a man than I am. If this is the thickness of the slab you're working with in your French dip, okay, this doesn't work for me. And so I'm just walking. He goes, well, I don't know what to tell you. And he just leaves. Like, he just leaves me to die. Like, he just walks away. Like, that fixed everything. It didn't help me at all. And so I'm freaking out. I don't know what to do. And so I call my wife, and whenever I get out of sorts and communication breaks down in relationships, what happens is what do? You just repeat yourself thinking you're going to get different results, right? So she goes, it's in the deli section. I'm like, there's deli meat right here that's all pre-packed. She's like, it's in the deli section. I was like, they say deli meat on the package, and I just don't know what's going on. And my brother-in-law had visited about a week and a half ago, so I just get off the phone and I call him. Like, I secret call him in the background. I'm like, hey, Ernie, where is this? I know you bought the stuff a while ago. He said, Seth, it's in the deli section. I said, man, I'm looking at the prepackaged meats right now. He goes, no, Seth. When you walk in the store, it's the thing that says deli in giant letters on the far right of the whole store. Like the giant, I said, like I look up, and in giant bold letters on the right side of that place is the word deli. Shocker, dumb Seth. And I go, okay, man, don't tell my wife about this. And I hang up, and I just walk over, and I finally find it, and the people are like, yes, you have found the promised land. Come forth and get your deli of meats. And so I get it. They cut the stuff for me. I go home, and I make the thing. But I'm telling you, I am abysmal at directions. And if I could just get the signs in advance and figure out what's going down, I could prevent a lot of frustration, more for my wife than for me, but it's definitely frustrating for me too. I get to this place where I should probably preemptively understand what's happening before it even occurs so that I can stop the train wreck, you know? It's that kind of like having the foresight to realize that the train wreck's coming. But I don't. I am just dumb every time, over and over and over again. And weirdly enough, we're like that constantly in our faith. In our faith, we know all the things that is going to lead to us aimlessly wandering spiritually, not being where we want to be when we follow God. We see them coming if we're being honest, but we just don't give them the proper attention and go, you know what, I see what that is, and I'm not going to do it this time. We just let it happen over and over and over again. And before we know it, we are very much not where we want to be in our walk with the Lord. And so today we're going to look at the kind of Jews, the children of Israel from the Old Testament, and how they should have seen the wandering coming. Because here's the deal. We're not looking at the 40 years of wandering. We're looking at one instance prior to that that is the catalyst for why they had to wander for 40 years and how they could have prevented all of it in the first place if they had just had the foresight to not fall prey for some of the same old tricks that any of us are going to fall prey to. And quite frankly, the same stuff that they had been falling prey to up to that point. Now, for you and me, I'll tell you this right now, we can all see something coming and probably know that it's not going to be bad. We can get lost in so many ways. As we're going to be seeing today, they got lost in literally the wilderness, in the desert in some instances, right? I mean, you see all these movies of people who just get lost, right? And then they see this oasis in the distance, and it's not an oasis, and they're just lost, and then, they can't make it work. You see the people who get lost at sea, and they just get, it just looks like ocean, and they don't know how they're ever going to, they don't know which way is north, south, they just get so out of whack. You see people who go on these hikes in the middle of the mountains in this beautiful area, but they get off the beaten path and they start to get to a place where they have no other, it's just trees. I don't know where we are. We got turned around, and I don't know how we got to where we are. So there's very physical ways in which that manifests, that if we kind of preemptively went, you know what, I need to probably make sure I grab that map from the ranger before we go into the woods, or I probably don't need to go walking off into the desert alone. That should probably be a first indicator. That's just just fun fact for you guys. Don't do it. It's bad. All those things, but this goes beyond physical things we deal with. It's emotional things as well. You can, if you're not careful, wandering spiritually will begin to manifest in very intense ways in other areas of your life. You can get lost in your emotions. You can get to a place where you haven't put checks and balances into your heart and into what God has already spoken about you and who you are and the faith you should have in His power and His sufficiency and the foundation of life. And you can all of a sudden let emotions and things get in, and they can begin to take hold of you in a way that you just don't realize the effect it's having. And over time, you get lost in your emotion, and it's no longer about whatever the thing was. You're just emoting about whatever's happening and probably taking it out on other people. Things can get lost in translation. You can be talking to somebody, maybe somebody you care about, family member or friend, and you're starting to say things and you mean it one way, but you kind of said it in a weird way that way, and then it started to break down, and that's whole like you're just digging your grave deeper because you're trying to get yourself out of it. And after a while, all of a sudden you're like, how did we even end up here? Like, how did this even happen? That's like 90% of fights in marriage. It's like you start off with something that has nothing to do with where you end up, okay? You're like, this is what's happening right now. We're talking about this. And then by the end of it, you're like, you know what your mother said 4 years ago? Back whenever we went to the birthday party? You're like, what is happening right now? Like, how did we even get lost into here? And we should have probably seen the signs and prevented this before we ended up at this place, but we don't. And quite frankly, all of these things, these negative places we land, if we kind of foundationally align ourselves with God and who Christ has called us to be, we put up guardrails for ourselves that will actually save us from being lost and wandering and all those other things too. So let's dive in and see what we can learn from this story of the Israelites. We're going to be in Numbers 13. So if you've got a copy of the Bible with you, go ahead and turn there. You can go to the Bible app and check that out. Actually, you can go to the Metro app. We got all the notes on there and the verses, so you can check that out. But as you're doing that, this is kind of the statement, if you will, that is what we're working towards in all of this. It's the culmination of every part of this passage that we got to understand. It's this: we can prevent spiritually wandering if we maintain our focus on the power of God. If we maintain our focus on the power of God. I say it time and time again, your perspective, your focus defines your reality. And this is going to be no different, that our focus needs to be on the power and sufficiency of an almighty, infinite God. We talked all about that even in a few series ago, and we talked about we need God to thrive in our lives. And to do that, we're going to have to recognize that if we end up in a place that we're not meant to be, that we're lost, we're wandering, and we are distant from God, there's only going to be one way that either A, prevents it in the first place, or B, brings us back, and that is the focal point of where we are being led. And that's at God. Here's what's happened so far up to Numbers 13. We'll be starting in verse 25. You've got a lot of stuff that's been thrown down with the Israelites. The most obvious one for some of you, if you've kind of done any study in this, or maybe you have little study of the Bible, but you might have seen enough movies to get it, right? We can go back to the Ten Commandments. We can go Charlton Heston on that kind of dynamic and all the way back. Or maybe you're kind of the cartoon route. You have Prince of Egypt, and it's the story of this guy named Moses, and it's the whole, hey, let my people go. Or maybe you're just kind of the old school song person and you're like, the Pharaoh, whoa. Nope, okay, nobody? All right. That is another route. It's this whole like, let my people. The Israelites were enslaved in Egypt. Moses steps in, and through the power of God, they end up going out from underneath this slavery. God even parts the waters. They walk through it. We even sang about it earlier. It's this idea of this massive movement, massive power of God. God even inflicts plagues to encourage the Egyptians to let it go. I mean, there's all these moments of God's power. He literally gives them the Ten Commandments when Moses goes to the mountain, all these things. But you understand, throughout all of this, so many weird things have been happening in the hearts of the Israelites. They have tangibly and visibly seen the power of God manifest over and over and over again in ways you and I have never truly visually experienced, okay? Like they have seen it happen, and there are so many times that they literally just start complaining. They lose sight and they forget. I think the beauty of this is so many times in our modern day context, we go, if God just showed up in like this physical way, like in this just very tangible, visible way, I would have faith that would never waver. I would have this place that I am constantly focusing on that power of God. Well, guess what? He did, and people still didn't. So don't use that as an excuse. His sufficiency, His power is maintained perfectly throughout the entirety of history, but it's our affections, our attentions, our hopes that waffle between where they need to. And so what's happened is that all through all this, they literally finally get to what is the promised land that God's going to have for them. And they send 12 scouts out to check this place out for 40 days. And they show up, and it's amazing. They find a bushel of grapes so big that they literally have to put it on a giant rod between two dudes so they can bring it back to prove how just bountiful this land is. There's people that live there, and they're pretty big. They even describe them as full-blown giants. So, like, these guys are jacked. Like, they are ridiculous in their size. So, not only is the land pretty plentiful, but, like, these people have been clearly blessed by the land, you know what I'm saying? And they are very much like, they cornbread fed, okay? Like, it's country boys. And so they are ready to roll, and there's some apprehension that 10 of the 12 have. Even though God has said this is the promised land, even though God said this is the goal, my power has been made obvious to you time and time again, this is it, they still come back after 40 days and they go, I don't know. So you've got 10 guys that are yelling out, we don't need to do this, regardless of what God says for our lives, and you got 2 who are saying, no, we need to do what God says. So let's dive in right here, Numbers 13, verse 25. At the end of 40 days, they returned from exploring the land. They came back to Moses and Aaron, says the 2 leaders of the group, and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. There, they reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. So that's that big old bushel of grapes. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. So they're starting out with this report. It's pretty clear where they stand, these 10 guys, all right? So we haven't heard from the 2 that don't agree, but we're hearing from the 10. And what happens is they start off, and I don't know if you're like this in your life, but I can so be this way. Negativity and focusing on the wrong things can be something we do constantly on a very practical level and on a spiritual one. We'll just look at our lives and look at what's going on, and we'll look at the decent stuff, and we'll be like, here's the deal. It's good. Yes, we have a house. Yes, we've got food on the table. And yes, most everybody's healthy for the most part, okay? But here's the deal. Let me tell you what's really happening and why my life stinks and why I can't get any joy and why everything's bad and why I don't like it and why I don't like you, by the way, Bob. Yeah, I saw you looking at me. And you just start going down this road of only focusing on the negative things. You might even do like these guys did, where you kind of give that pre-qualifier. You know how that works? Where I can't just be negative, so I'm going to give one pre-qualifier that's good so I can feel better about all the negative junk I'm about to spew. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I hear you, and I know that this is great, and you're great. Sandy, I love you. You are amazing, and we're best friends. However, this is all the horrible things that you bring to the table, sweetheart. And it's just this whole weird deal, right? Or maybe it's just your life in general. Yes, I understand that we are fine right now as a household, and this is where I go, right? My wife is such an amazing rock and a voice of reason, and she'll be like, but baby, this, and I'm like, I hear that. However, this, and I just go down that road, right? I'm like, just validate my unhealth, woman. What is wrong with you, okay? Stop being godly and come with me on my sinful journey, all right? Right? And we're all there. We've been there. You don't want to acknowledge the good because you're too focused on the bad. And if we're not careful, that is one of the chief and most initial warning signs of wandering. Point one is this: don't focus on the wrong things. We're going to be looking at 4 don'ts as it applies to our spiritual walk. Don't do these 4 things, otherwise you will wander. You might look back and go, how did I get here? And I'm willing to bet that 1, if not all 4 of these things were part of the narrative. So look at inwardly right now and assess where you are with these things. And hopefully, if you aren't in a state of wonder, this will help you not end up there if some signs are already showing up. We can't focus on the wrong things. They couldn't see past their obstacles. Not one of them, not one of these 10 said, hey, but do y'all remember how we were enslaved in Egypt? And how God just showed up and did all these crazy things to release us? Do you not remember how he just, he parted the sea so we could walk through it? He did all these things, and we just, we're just going to sit here and complain? No, he is powerful. He is God. He is Yahweh. He has done more than we could ever think. They didn't bring any of that up. That's where it gets interesting, right? Not only do we not focus on the good things, but we don't focus on the God things. So even when they pointed out the good things, none of them had anything to do with God and anything he'd done for them up to that point. He's like, yeah, that land's great. It's cool. Milk and honey. That's a whole thing. A lot of grapes. People are huge, though. We're going to die. We should probably not go here. We've got to focus on who God is, focus on the good blessings of our lives, and don't focus on the wrong things. Let's keep reading. It's going to be in verse 30. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land. This is one of the 2 who are going to have a very different narrative. We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. Notice we're changing the narrative. Used to be this amazing land of milk and honey and all these things, but anyone who lives there, it devours them, right? It's really not that great. The land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of giant size. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we look the same to them. Are you like I described in that moment of my interactions at home at times? Where a voice of reason steps in and says, but surely this is not so. Surely you know who God is. Surely you know that this thing that you're coming up against and you're frustrated by is something you can find victory over. Surely you know that. And do we listen normally? No. If you're anything like me, or maybe I'm just the most awful person out of all of us, either way, I'm willing to be honest about that. But we don't. We don't listen to it. Somebody comes in and they're super well-meaning. And can we be real? The more well-meaning they are, the more intense we want to clap back. You know what I'm saying? Like, it could be, the more like pure-hearted and loving they are, you're like, I just want to, like, yeah, I see what, oh yeah, I love it. Like, you're trying to just give me godly advice. I'll tell you what I'd like to give you. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Peace of my mind is what I'd like to give you. And like, it's just, you just go into these negative cyclones of thinking. It's just circular back and forth, and you just start feeding off of your own negativity. Two is this, and this is the next don't, is don't ignore godly accountability. That's another thing that's going to be a pretty key instance of you getting to a place of wandering. You start off in a place of negativity where you can't focus on anything good in your life, can't focus on anything God's done that's good. And then you move from that to a place of finally somebody shows up that's a voice of reason and wants to encourage you and love you, and you can't receive it. Like, you know what? I don't need this from you. I just need you to validate my insecurities and my negativity. That's what I needed. And if they do that, and if you're not careful, you'll surround yourself with people who will only do that. You will only further yourself down that road of wandering, of eventually going, how did I even get here? Don't ignore godly accountability. Caleb tries to step in. He tries to say, look, we know who God is. We know what he's done. Like, we can do this. Come on, guys. And they won't listen. And they keep going back and forth and back and forth. Moving forward to Numbers 14 and verse 1, it says this. That night, all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. So emotion is just flying right now. All the Israelites grumbled against Moses and Aaron. So this is not Moses and Aaron are not the two scouts who are speaking positively. You understand, Moses and Aaron are the two figureheads of the whole group. They're the leaders. You've got kind of Moses, who's this leader figurehead. You've got Aaron, who's overseeing really the spiritual side of things of what's going on. And these two guys are kind of the culmination of this nation of Israel. And so they're starting to grumble against Moses and Aaron. And the whole assembly said to them, if only we had died in Egypt, or in the wilderness up till now. Why is the Lord bringing us to this land only to let us fall by the sword? Our wives and children will be taken as plunder. Wouldn't it be better for us to go back to Egypt? Literally, wouldn't it be better for us to just be slaves again? And they said to each other, we should choose a leader and go back to Egypt. Whew. So they get so wrapped up in their negativity. They get so in an echo chamber of negative thinking. The thing they were saved from before seems better than going through what they are dealing with now. Not the thing that was better, the thing that they were saved from. And they can't look at the thing in their life like they need to. They literally, can we just be real how messed up that logic is? They literally described the two things that God had delivered them from and said, God should have just let those be the thing that took me out because this one's going to take me out worse and I can't deal with that. That's a negative place. When you start getting so comparative and internally thinking and so adrift and starting to get so off focus that you start thinking through all the bad things you've been through before and get disillusioned and start just saying, my life's so much worse, everything's worse, I got nothing in my life good, everything's going to go bad, it's just not what it needs to be. Your dependence ain't on the Lord. If anything, you're blaming Him at this point. And additionally, they don't just blame God, they start trying to blame other people who are good people in their life. 3 is this: don't blame your troubles on others or even compare your situation to others. Now, here's where that kind of gets subtly nuanced. The others you can blame it on might be those godly accountability people in your life that you're looking at and you're going, you know what? You don't really care about me. You don't care about this. It could be God Himself. You could be like, you know what, God? You're all powerful. You could have prevented this mess, but yet here I stand, so I blame you. You could compare your situation. You might get to a place where you're looking at somebody else's life and you're going, you know what? They just have it so good. If they just had to deal with the mess I dealt with, they'd be as miserable as I am. I can tell you that right now. They're just 2 bad days away from being me. Or you could look at that same dynamic comparatively and not just compare to other people, but compare to your own narrative, just in a different season. And that can be good or bad. You can say, man, it's so horrible right now, but by comparison to how good it used to be. Can we all be real? We can do that real quick right now. That one we can all get a little sting from. Things just were the way they were before, Seth, then we would all be fine. It's not like all this negativity was already boiling under the surface and like this just kind of brought it into light. No, yeah. We'd just be fine. We'd be better off. Or you can fantasize and romanticize your negative and awful experiences in a way that you try to belittle those in comparison to make this thing you're dealing with so much worse. And you forget the ways that you got out of that thing before in the first place. And you just start playing this comparison game. And you start playing blame and comparison. These are the don'ts, my friend. Don't be negative and focused in a way that you don't need to. Don't ignore the godly accountability. And don't blame and compare. These things are not going to have you land anywhere you want to. And the beauty of it is, and by that I am speaking very ironically and sarcastically when I say beauty, is that you so many times, I so many times, don't even realize how far down that road we're allowing our rhetoric and our thinking and our emotions to bring us. It can get so deeply ingrained that it's just subconscious, and we don't even realize that we're doing it in all of our relationships, in our walk with God. We don't realize that in all that negativity, we just stopped reading God's Word. Why would I even read that if I'm blaming Him for it? We just realize we haven't been praying to God or reaching out to Him in any way in all of our stuff. This is where it gets really crazy, is you get to such a place, if you are a follower of God, that you have done so much to get away from it, that you'll literally say something like, if I just was as strong in my faith as I used to be, then I would be in a better place right now. Do you understand how crazy that is? Because you are the one who got you there in the first, like you're the only one that can bring it back. That's not a reasoning for why you can't move forward. That's a reason to go back to the one who matters. And we can really spin some stories in our head that send us down a rough road. But we can't blame our troubles. We can't compare our situations. Numbers 14, verse 5 says this. Then Moses and Aaron fell face down in front of the whole Israelite assembly gathered there. Joshua, son of Nun, N-U-N, not Nun, like he had family, he had parents, it's spelled weird. Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had explored the land, tore their clothes. This is kind of a sign of mourning and remorse and just brokenheartedness. And said to the entire Israelite assembly, the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, He will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord And do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. Man, that was like a Braveheart speech right there. You know what I'm talking about? Like they're like, it's freedom! And like they should all just lined up and been like, high five, just charge, just take out the enemy. That's it right there. Like that's the culmination of the movie, okay? Like everybody was down and out. Everything was not looking super great. Caleb gets up there, he's on a white horse, and he's like, my brothers! And he just does this whole speech, and they all cruise. Verse 10. But the whole assembly talked about stoning them. Stoning them, just so you know, means taking large boulders, not little pebbles, boulders, and literally just hitting people with them and throwing them, and sometimes putting them in a pit and throwing them down at them until they literally are bludgeoned to death. That's how out of their heads, that's how far down the road of negativity and their emotionalism and their forgetting of who God was that they were here. They couldn't hear it anymore. Not only could they not hear it, but hearing it at all triggered them to violence, quite frankly, literally to rebel against that which they knew to be good, that had been good to them for years. And they go, no. You know what? Not only do I not agree with you, but I'm done listening to you, so I think we should just kill you so we don't have to hear you anymore. 4 is this. Don't turn on the people trying to point you to God. See, the thing that happens where you really, and this is probably one of the final steps of where you find yourself really adrift. And this one doesn't necessarily happen overnight. This one, it takes you a while. Is that the people who really do care about you and really were that accountability point early on in the narrative, those people that were saying, you know what, I care about you and I see this not going well. Can't you just focus on what good? Don't you realize who God is for you? And that might be if you're a follower of Christ or not. You might have never followed God, but some person stepped into your life and tried to speak some love to you, tried to be there for you, and you just didn't want to receive it. They tried to point you to God for the first time, and you just didn't want to hear it. But wandering is set in and all those things. You've got mad at God. You've got mad at situation. And here's where it gets crazy. You have full-blown turned on the people who were trying to help you in the first place. Yeah, well, you do know that they do this. You know, they're really a hypocrite anyways. You know, this, that, and the other. And you just start building this narrative as to why either A, they are just outright not person worth listening to in the first place, or B, you might be attacking their character altogether. You might even kind of verbally assault them in some way in a moment of weakness where you're just letting that negativity spill out. It's just gotten to that point. You've let it fester for so long. And it's no longer that you can't hear them. It's that you want them to feel the pain you feel and the fear you feel. That's all it is. It's allowing our weakness to get the better of us. It's allowing that wandering to progress. And unfortunately for the Israelites, it does not end well there. They end up having to wander for 40 years. And the only 2 people out of an entire generation of people who will get to enter the promised land are Caleb and Joshua. The only 2 people to say, no, our God is greater. Our God is stronger. He's greater than any other. And we can depend on him. We've seen his character to be true. They got to see the promised land, but everyone else had to miss out. They explored the promised land for 40 days, and then they had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. And if they'd have just seen the signs, they could have been in the promised land then. Every last one of them. And here's where it gets really scary, okay? And I want to be very real with you. If you let this anchor too deep, it might not have a happy ending for you either. If you get to such a place of negativity and just explosiveness and blame and comparison, and you're just going out against the people who care about you most, you might not make it. I don't want that for you. God certainly doesn't want that for you, and it doesn't have to be the case for you. But it's going to take you recognizing what's going on. It's going to take you taking a step back, looking and assessing internally what's happening within you, and being real honest. And going, I see this in me, and I don't like where it's leading. Because it's leading nowhere. Certainly nowhere I want to be. The only way you can prevent spiritual wandering is by maintaining your focus on the power of God. Be reminded of who He is, or recognize it for the first time, whatever that looks like for you. But He wants to walk with you. He wants to prove to you His goodness and His power. Some of you have already experienced it, but you've just forgotten. And you need to be reminded. Scripture, this is one of my favorite passages. It says, "Awake, O ye sleeper, rise and let God shine on you." Some of us got to wake up. Maybe spiritually that needs to be for the first time for you. Maybe you need to accept Christ as your Savior for the first time today. We'll talk to you later about some ways you can respond and do that. Maybe you just need to hit the autocorrect button, or maybe, just maybe, and this is my big prayer for today, is that maybe you need to see what's going on so you don't have to feel like you're wandering for years and years and years. And you can get back to the power of God and walking in the certainty, quite frankly, the joy that comes from that. Let's pray. Father in heaven, I thank you that you are a God who does not wish for us to wander. I thank you that you are a God whose power exists, is real, and directs us and guides us and leads us if we will just focus on you. Good. You are good. You're good. And I need to hear that over and over again, because sometimes I don't want to. But you are good. Even in my weakness and emptiness, you are there. Your rod comforts me. Be with us, Jesus. Help us see the signs.